Avraham Avinu's story starts this week's parsha when he is 75 years old. Hashem tells Avraham, Lech Lecha, get up and go. And Avraham gets up and goes. There should be a question over here of, who are you, right? Hashem reveals himself to Avraham, talks to Avraham, and says, go. Avraham should say, who are you? And then Hashem explains who he is. I'm the creator of the world. And then Avraham would get up and go. The reason that you're getting up and go, something. No, Avraham isn't asking questions. So there is subtext over here, which means Avraham's life clearly doesn't start at age 75, clearly had a childhood and adulthood and all the rest of that, and he clearly had some sort of either interaction or knowledge or belief that there is one God, Hashem, and that when Hashem reveals himself to him, either in previous interactions that the Torah doesn't deem important enough to tell us about, or in this one, he gets up and goes because he knows that there's one God. We have this later on, that he bumps into someone and that person blesses him in God's name, right? So there's clearly a belief system of there is one God that Avraham either starts or is believing in, depending on how you're reading how you read the Torah. But one of the things that we rely heavily on in these kinds of situations are the midrashim. The midrashim fill in the blanks. They fill in the subtext, everything that happened beforehand, everything that's happening in between that the Torah doesn't tell us about. Some of these midrashim are folktale, passed on from generation to generation. Some of them come to teach us something, but they're there and they're written in a book called Midrash Rabbah. In this book, it tells us that Avraham Avinu, when he's a very small child, looks around and says, the Midrash says he sees the building is lit. So clearly there's an owner to the building, right? If you look at a building and there's a light on in the building, then you say there's an architect, there's builders, there's someone who brought the candle, someone who lit the candle, right? Clearly someone owns all of this. Could be it's all the same person or the same thing, but it didn't happen by itself. So what does Avraham do in this situation? According to the Midrash, he wakes up in the morning and he says, someone clearly created this. Who is this? So he looks at the biggest and most powerful thing that there is. He looks at the sun, and the sun burns your eyes when you look at it. And he says, clearly, this is God, nothing else can stand in its way, and he starts to pray towards the sun. And then as he's finishing his prayers, the moon comes and chases the sun away. He says the moon doesn't seem as impressive as the sun, but maybe with all of the stars and all of the army that the moon has with it, maybe this is what makes him powerful enough to defeat the sun. And then he wakes up in the morning and the sun is back. He says there can't be two kings in the sky. So he looks and he sees the ocean, and it's so powerful, it can destroy everything in its path. So he starts praying to that, but the mountains are still standing, so maybe it's the mountain that is overseeing everything. And eventually he gets to the conclusion that there is one God, Hashem, that rules over everything. Now what's interesting about this midrash is the words that it uses to open it up. He sees the building and it is lit. And there's two different ways of looking at it. One way of looking at it is it's on fire. The world is in chaos. And Avraham says, who owns this place? Who owns the world? Who is governing this? Why is the world on fire? The second way of looking at it is the world is lit. It is beautiful. It's amazing. Who created all of this? And I think that the conclusion from this, on both sides, is doesn't matter if you think that the world is on fire or that the world is magnificent, you should be asking the question, who runs the world? Shabbat Shalom.